Thing going. If you haven't signed in yet, we will need to make sure that we have a quorum, more than 25%. So if you don't mind signing in the back real quick. We'll give it a minute here so people can get settled here before I get started. I think we have 104 members right now, so we need 26 or more people. Oh, Brett's worth 3 people, so we're good. Is that like my mom's vote was always worth 6? Oh, yeah. I think our line is short enough out there that I think we'll just get going with this first little explanation of agenda. As you guys know, we're a little bit on a time crunch because we'll have our kids returning to us at 11:30. So I want to get this thing going. It's going to look a little different than annual meetings of the past, partly because of COVID. And normally we have handouts for you, year in review type stuff. But we don't have that this time, and our agenda is going to be a little bit shortened up too to fit things in. But it sure was nice to have a little bit of coffee and cake, wasn't it? A little bit of normalcy for that. So anyway, I'm officially going to call this meeting to order right now. And as I call this to order, why don't I start with a word of prayer here before I explain the agenda. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for what today was. It sure was fun to reflect on the faithfulness you've had for Valley over the past 25 plus years. Thinking about where we have been as a church and where we have moved towards and where we hope to go, we just ask that you continue to guide us and lead us and to help us to fulfill what you've called us to do and to help others grow in Christ and to bring others to Christ. We thank you for that. In your name, amen. Okay, so on the agenda today, just kind of going to hit on some big picture type stuff. We're going to spend less time on going through past milestones and the smaller things. But I do want to start today by just commenting on the fact that, or reminding you that we are a congregationally led church, and questions, comments, feedback, those are always appreciated. We're not going to have a ton of time today for them, although we are going to be open to them throughout from the audience. We'll have microphones going around throughout. There'll be a question and answer time at the end. But at any point, if you want to get something said or have a question, even if we can't respond to it today, we will respond to it at some point through some means. And we'd like you to use the menti.com thing that we've used in Sunday school as one way of asking questions or giving feedback. You can see the code if you're at home. This is for people at home also watching. The code is on the screen. Those of you here, you can see the code up on the screen also. Pastor Mike has a computer by him that he can kind of filter questions. We're in reverse roles today. I'm normally the one over there behind the screen, but he's going to give them to me. So that's how we'd like you to ask questions as one way. The other way, of course, is just the traditional method of raising your hands and we'll get you a mic. So both of those ways are going to work. So we're going to go over, we don't have anyone to vote on today, so that piece won't need to be, there won't be anything with that. I'm going to do a giving and budget update here right off the bat. And then we're going to talk a little bit about milestones, the year 2020. As we know, it was a year unlike no other. And then we're going to move into a couple of the big items for 2021, and then with questions and feedback after that and comments. So I'll kick this thing off with a giving and budget update. Start with the fun stuff first. Back in November, if you remember, if you're at church that day or watching online, I gave an announcement that we weren't going to do an end-of-the-year giving in 2020, partly because we knew that in some point in 2021 we're going to do a campaign, which we'll talk more about that later. But we didn't do it in any giving, but I did say that we had fallen a little behind our budget pace, not drastically, but kind of a slow, it was kind of just a slow, gradual release and not staying up to par with where we needed to be. And we were getting kind of borderline the zone we didn't want to get into. So I did say there was a need, and we have overwhelmingly matched that need. So here is the numbers that I can provide for you today through the end of 2020, so through December 31st. Our budgeted number that we wanted to get through, that's 3/4 of the way through our fiscal year, through 2020, was going to be 361, and we were on pace to be below that by a fair amount, and we ended up bringing in huge months in November and December for our general fund, getting up to 395, so a $34,000 surplus on what we budgeted. And then, yeah, that's really very much a praise. Because of the year 2020, it was a really tough year to budget for, honestly, because we didn't know how things were going to go with COVID. And this was in March, the budget season too, the very beginning of COVID. We did the best we could budgeting, so we didn't know where our expenses would fall. Our expenses ended up at the end of December being 326, which is about 70,000 less. So we are up $70,000 if you compare income to expenses this past year, which puts us in a really good spot. This is this is everything to do with the months of November and December as far as the huge surplus. In just those 2 months, we were in the plus $96,000 on what came in versus what we spent, our income versus our outgo. So we had very generous months over those two. Just in December alone, we had $96,000 come in. So yes, we are very thankful for you on that. And well, it's the Lord. I mean, it's God's faithfulness working through you and through us. So anyway, that's a very positive to be in. We have you guys obviously knew today, the mortgage is gone, and that helped out with our expenses, of course, too. But we're in a very good position right now, which is different than what I had said in November. So that's where we're at with giving. Our focus will be on the campaign in 2021, which we'll talk more about, like I said, in a little bit. Now I want to talk a little bit about one of the big questions that you might have is, now that the mortgage has been paid off, where is it going to go? Just a couple comments with that. The first one is in the present. So where we currently planned, knowing that it would be paid off. By the way, when I had mentioned in the service that I went back to 2014 to notes, and one of the things I saw in 2014 was, in 7 years, we're going to have the mortgage paid off in July of 2021. A couple years ago, we put some money forward into the principal, so it got paid off a little bit earlier than that. But it's kind of fun to see, back then it was like, man, 7 years, that's quite a ways. Well, we're already here. Time just flies and it moves by. So we're to that point now, it's just an awesome place to be. But now we have this line item in our budget that was a huge chunk, about $70,000 a year towards mortgage payments, that we're asking God, where do we go next with that? So for this current year, without knowing COVID, we budgeted it, and knowing that a campaign was coming up. The current situation is any excess funds that's given is going to the building itself. As our building has aged, there's just obvious needs that anybody could walk around the building and see. And we'll, again, talk more about that later. But that's currently where any excess funds would go, any extra money towards the general fund. We also have in mind, and I mentioned that we're looking towards the future on other things, but also on this is, where do we go next with it? And we're praying about, asking the Lord about, where is our preferred future for that? I mentioned our 6 values earlier: worship, word, generosity, community, family, mission. The way I remember that is, what will God call for me? That's my little acronym that I use for it. So it's kind of, what will God call for mortgage payment? So we'll plug in M for that one. And one of the ways that as an elder board we've been talking through is, we really feel led towards mission. It's on our heart right now, very mission-oriented for that. One of the percentages I'll throw out to you is that we give 17% of our overall budget goes towards mission, which is it's a really good percent number, high compared to other churches. Last year I was talking with somebody from CIF, that's who we had our mortgage through, and he heard that our number was 17% towards missions. He's like, wow, that's a really good number. But It's also a number that we would like to increase. I feel like that's on the heart of a lot of people here at Valley. One of the things we would like to strive for is getting above 20%. And that's maybe an area we go to and that we're reaching out to the Lord for that answer on. It's also an area we'd appreciate questions, feedback, comments. Again, this is a congregationally led church, and we'd like to hear from all of you too on this as we look to the Lord. So we welcome all of that for you. So it's a little bit to be determined, but mission is very much on our mind for that answer, I guess. I'm going to pause for a second. Any questions immediately for budget related? That's about as in detail as I need to go today. As you guys know, in a couple months, we'll have our real budget meeting, but it's an overall positive outlook. Okay, let's just recap the year 2020 real quick. For that, I'm going to ask Pastor Mike to come on up here, and we'll do that.
We'll take just a moment, and God has been so faithful over the course of this year. I don't know if we pay attention to that as much as we should, because we're so busy trying to adapt to everything that happens daily and hourly as the landscape changes all the time on us. So one thing I'd like to say, it seems like forever ago. It was the middle of March, and we went from an elders meeting on a Wednesday or Thursday night saying, oh my goodness, there's a pandemic coming. How should we serve communion on Sunday? Because you can't touch the elements now. How are we going to do that? By Saturday morning, at the end of a new members class, the elders gathered again on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and we canceled church for the next day. And we went into scramble mode and recorded that night. That's how fast it turned. And I just want to say to all of you who have just pitched in and said, okay, we need to do things differently, how are we going to do it differently? And I believe Valley Free turned on a dime, and we got the live stream going, thanks to Jason and Caleb and others, and now we have the fellowship hall live streamed, and we have families in there during the worship service. Never had that before, all just like that. And children's ministry had to turn on a dime, and thank you, Mary Lou, and your team. Martha, you're sitting here too, I probably shouldn't mention names, but because so many people are involved, but man, we just said we got to keep ministry going, and if they say we can't do this, then we'll go do that. And it happened, and our families were supported through it, and then summer came, and we decided to go in person again, and Peter Larson brought the trailer in, Keenan's decorated it, and Anderson's did all that stuff, and you guys did the worship, the sound system, and Megan adapting to do live worship outside in the hot sun. Just so many names and so many people just said, I'll help, I'll do whatever it takes. And the ministry kept going. It was different this year than we expected, but I just want to say thank you to everyone for your passion and your zeal to see the ministry carried forward. That's what makes Valley Free special to me, is that sense of family. There's a long list of things over the course of the year that we need to praise God for. Could anybody want to lead the way on that? Anybody have a thought? There's a microphone roaming the room someplace. Raise your hand.
We got Jamie there.
I just want to reemphasize a comment that you made about the online capability for those of us that have had to be a little bit careful with the COVID situation. To be able to watch church every Sunday and participate in Sunday school has been a real blessing for our family, and I am grateful to all of those that were involved, because I know that isn't an easy thing to get up and going, but they did it well. They did a job well done.
They did it well, yes. And it's behind the scenes, but the elders were back behind saying, we don't have the money for this, but we need to spend the money to do this. And so we did it, and the elders were making those decisions. And Dan.
Yeah, Mike, sorry. I want to express my appreciation for everybody's cooperation when we had to make adjustments to social distance and the way we enter the auditorium, the sanctuary, and seat and exit. there were a lot of changes in a short period of time, and everybody knows what we're doing now, but it was a challenge to incorporate those changes.
Anybody want? Martha? Here.
For those at home.
Oh, for those watching at home. Wow, can we just praise God for the gift of life? How many little babies have been born? This is pandemic baby season. And when I, see these moms and dads coming with their car seats, what is there, six babies or something? We have been given the gift of life. When you don't stress and don't panic about, bringing a new life into this world, it is an amazing blessing to see that God continues to bring life into this world.
Yes, we have a baby dedication. We're scheduling that now, and we have 4 babies that are going to be dedicated sometime in the next few weeks. Anybody want the last word? Going once? There's so many other things, but we need to give it back to Pete.
That's okay. That's good. Okay. So, so thank you, Mike, for that little piece of a recap of 2020. I'm looking forward to 2021. There's 2 things that I think are really important to address today and talk about. So those are what I'm going to be talking about. The first one is about, think back to the last annual meeting. I didn't have to cut anything really because it's about Mike's sabbatical, so I'm going to update you on that. And then the next one is on the campaign. So let's start with the sabbatical. So if you remember back in January of last year, we talked about how Pastor Mike would be going on a sabbatical, kicking off right after the trip to Greece. It was Greece at the time, correct, that trip? Yep. So it was going to be from the beginning of April until the beginning of July, essentially, 3-month sabbatical. And then COVID happened, and for a few different reasons. One just being that there's no way Mike was going to be able to rest and get what he needed if he went on his sabbatical at the very beginning of COVID when everything was so unsure. We decided to hold off on that. And what we've decided as an elder board is to essentially recreate our schedule from 2020 into 2021 as much as we can and gift Mike with the sabbatical for this the current year that we're now in 2021. So I'm not going to do what I did last year, which was read off a fair amount on like the rationale and reasons why, but I don't want to skip that piece either. So I want to read just a few reasons why we're gifting this to Mike as a church. So while Pastor Mike is responsible to God and our church, we are also responsible for the care of our pastor. Mike has been a pastor for 26 years, and if you're familiar with sabbaticals and at churches, 26 years is a long time to not have any break like a sabbatical can offer. Being a pastor is more than a full-time job. Mike doesn't get to leave his work when he goes home. Even his days off and vacations are subject to being interrupted by church-related calls and emergencies. I didn't understand this piece until, as much as I do now, until I walked with my principal a couple years ago when I was getting my principal license, and seeing, because I would relate them similar in some aspects, is she could not leave work at home at all. She was invested in her 700 kids at my school, and she was always the go-to for everything. Even when she was gone, she had to be ready at a moment's notice. And it's similar for Mike, too, where a lot of us can leave our work at home, or leave our work at work and come home to our family. Mike has got that constantly on his mind. The demands of pastoral ministry can drain a person's physical, emotional, and spiritual energy. So a strong sense of call to ministry and loyalty, that's a key word for Mike here actually, loyalty to his flock has enabled Pastor Mike to persevere in spite of these hardships. So that's just I wanted to emphasize that piece. But while Mike should be, or pastors in general, should be responsible for their own rest and refreshment, the nature of ministry as well as the makeup of many pastors combine to the effect that pastors often do not invest sufficient time and energy in developing themselves personally. Sometimes pastors do not take the needed personal time, feeling responsible for ministry 24/7. So short-term urgencies can crowd out long-term necessities. So we are hoping that the benefits from Mike's sabbatical, which I'll explain the details of like the when and the how it's going to work, will provide these things for him. We hope that he's a grateful pastor who returns to God's calling with renewed vigor, insight, appreciation, humility, and understanding. He's a pastor better prepared for service in and to the local church, whose gifts are also enhanced for serving the entire kingdom of Christ. We hope that sabbaticals in general allow churches to draw on other resources, perhaps formerly unexpressed when the pastor is present. And we do have a lot of good resources in our church now to use. And I left this one on here from last year. Probably even more grateful pastor's wife from the sabbatical. So there's a lot of reasons why, and we feel like it's very important for Mike to have this. So when it's going to start, his first Sunday away is going to be on March 21st. So soon after Missions Week, which is our first, it's a Sunday to Sunday week in March. He's going to return to the office then in June 22nd. And then a little bit of time to get his feet wet, and then his first Sunday back is July 11th. So that leaves quite a bit of Sundays in between that gap. So who is a lot of the question for a lot of stuff? And we are very much blessed at our church to have another pastor who can take the reins when it comes to the pulpit on Sunday mornings, and that is Caleb, of course. So Caleb's agreed to take 9 of the 16 Sundays. And that's a combination of sabbatical and vacation that worked out for Mike's schedule to take. We also were thinking Mike would be able to, they were planning another trip that originally we were thinking that would be part of while Mike was gone on Sundays, but that trip was now canceled too because of travel stuff. So Caleb is going to take 9 of them, a little over 50%. I'll be preaching a Sunday, and John Ranzo will be taking the rest. Just that game is called Two Truths and a Lie, by the way. We do have a lot, but we do have we have the resources to help fill in the gaps. Mike will be sorely missed on Sunday mornings, but we do have what it takes. Now's a good time for us to do it. Other people have agreed to step up in a lot of different ways. We have staff, elders, ministry leaders that are just going to have to step up during that time. A specific one is Caleb is going to release some of his youth duties, and he's got a big, strong team behind him that can take on a lot of those while he focuses on more senior pastor type duties. So, and then the list goes down on people that are going to have to step up. Let's see. One rule I want to make sure that you understand this is there will be absolutely no contacting Mike during his sabbatical. So from March 16th to June 22nd. It's not a check on Mike time. Everything at church related needs to be out the door with Pastor Mike. So contacting elders or Caleb, or depending on the situation, under no circumstance, unless the building's burning down or something, we're going to let Mike know. But for the most part, we want to leave him out of it, and he's setting up his plan currently. We are helping him set up a plan too, and someone from the district office is helping him prepare for his sabbatical and the pieces that are important for him to come back refreshed and ready to roll for his next set of tenure as our pastor. So any questions on that? I'm going to pause for a second on that, and then we got one more piece. Has anything come up, Mike, under? Okay. Sure. All right. And the last big piece for 2021 I want to talk about, or at least let someone else talk about, is our capital campaign. And I'm going to call up Dan Kep for that piece. I'm going to need a mic to hand him, though.
So you weren't kidding, there's really only 1 minute, right?
Yeah. We can go over a few minutes.
I got 2 minutes on my phone. Okay.
Yep.
So let me start off with capital campaign. We talked about this and wanted to be able to do this in the near future. We shared this last year. So when is this really going to happen? Well, it's going to start out probably early this fall. So 2021 is going to be a capital campaign, likely a September timeframe. We'll get a little bit more details on that. But we've pushed that back for a few different reasons. We can get into a lot of those details, but I'm going to keep it short. Yes, the COVID pandemic is really kind of threw a wrench into everything. And when we started getting into the really doing the assessment of the capital campaign, here at the end of the year and getting to try and get ourselves situated for that, realized we need to take more time to do that assessment as we've looked at what is all in scope for our campaign. So, so we need that time. We're doing quoting and stuff with contractors right now. We're trying to understand that full ask so that we can really get ready to prepare something to be able to present to the congregation. So that's the reasoning for why. So capital campaign, we just stood here and burned our mortgage. We talked about a lay in the hill. So why another capital campaign? And so what we need to do now is really to address needed exterior structural improvements is the primary focus. And let me give you a phrase to be able that you'll start seeing as we get into this campaign. That's really going to have to be our really our calling as we go through this. It's really, we need to be able to provide a safe haven for the next generation of families to congregate together in a place we are proud to call home. We've did a fantastic job, and Jamie, how many years ago was it now already with the Light on the Hill? Was it? It was 2017. So we're already 4 years now.
2012.
2012 was further than that.
Wow.
I was like, see, I feel like it was just yesterday too. So to that point, wow, 2012. Okay, so we're almost 10 years from when we did this, which is crazy to think about. But at the same time that we've been able to maintain our building and keep it functional, which is great, there are issues. And we need to be able to support that. And that's primarily exterior work that we have to do. So what are some of those objectives then that we're trying to do? So I'm going to take a step into the deep here, but then feel free to come and ask me questions or talk to us. You can, Kurt, I'll offer Kurt a little bit too to be able to ask some questions too about building aspects, but certainly come to me and bring any kind of thoughts too. But priorities here on exterior side is we have to look at siding. We have siding damage out there that has to get repaired. The painting, which if we're painting or are we doing siding that doesn't need to be painted, that's all in the scope of looking at here. Windows, exterior doors. Is there still a snowdrift in your window, Mike? I think at the moment. That's been a recurring theme each winter. So we have to fix those kind of things. We've been able to deal with it, but now is our time to fix it. There's still repairs too in the ceiling from when we've had roof leaks and stuff that we have to repair. And there's roof work still to do. We've been able to do the repairs, but we have to actually fix it so we don't keep having other different damages. So those are the things that are primary. There's a lot of other things to consider because we have another campus. It's over in Romania. And that's also on the heart of the elders here, and we're looking at that's going to be in conversation as we're doing this assessment, what could be done. We're talking to Pastor Christie about that. The parking lot and other things are still in conversation and trying to see what's the right things to do there. We've got multiple air conditioners. We've got also at the lower level door on the very west side, some drainage issues there still that are also still in some conversation too. So those are all the things that we're assessing at this point so we can get ready to prepare a presentation for the congregation. So if I can do this, I want to ask two things. One, if God lays this on your heart for being engaged and involved, as Jamie shared about the Lay on the Hill, it's not me that's going to do this, it's not Kurt that's going to be able to do this. So we need a team. So feel free to contact me and talk to me about where and how you could be engaged and involved. And second is pray for this because we're going into this. We know we have work to do. And as we showed the faithfulness today, the stories were fantastic of how from Bruce on through, God's shown faithful as we've gone into these. So pray for us to continue with our unity that we have within our board as well as within our campaign as we go through that. Wisdom and clarity on making wise choices and decisions that need to be made from the building and facility. Generosity, obviously, that generosity continues to come through. thank you, Pete, for the report on the giving here in December. But we'll need another level of generosity again. And the last piece to pray about is really the joy. I want to pray about the joy that we just experienced with burning the mortgage to setting this facility up to really be set for the next generation. All the babies we just talked about, to be able to stand up here and be the next elders and to be the next worship team and to be the next pastor maybe. So that's what I would love for you to step into that prayer time right now with us as we're doing this assessment. And if God lays it on your heart, let me know. Thank you. So I went well beyond my 2 minutes.
That's okay. Thanks, Dan.
All right.
I missed an important link in that chain. I should have started with this, is the fact that we did need a team, we needed a leader for this campaign. And we went to Dan, obviously, and asked him, and he has graciously accepted that position. So if you could give Dan a clap here for accepting that. As some of you know from leading things like that, and I can look right at Jamie as a recent one, it's a lot of work to manage and lead something like that. So we thank you for that, Dan. Okay, so those are our big two things that we want to talk about today, and our time is running short, but I would like to open it up to any questions. Mike, you have a couple of questions? Okay. So the question was, does the project include replacing the roof over the storage room? And I'd go to Kurt on that question. So there's been just an update. That's kind of been a fix once whenever we need to, kind of as a Band-Aid, right? That one specifically. So that one's part of the getting a quote for it to see how it measures up. So we don't have an exact answer on that, but that's one of the things we're looking into. Yeah, so focusing on local mission, right? That's essentially what the question was. That really has been on our hearts, actually. I can look at the elders and say that we've been talking about that a lot. We had an elder retreat in November, and as we've done the past few Novembers, and that's one of the main things we've been talking a lot about. Just on Thursday, a very good point was brought up in that COVID, in some ways, will really it's a great opportunity. You've mentioned that COVID is an opportunity for other things, but a specific thing that COVID is a great thing for, might provide a good thing for, is while we've had to put things on pause, when we pick things back up again, it helps us to reassess where our main priorities are and to realign some of our things. It's a good opportunity and time to do that. And local mission is an area that we have a strong heart for, the elder board I'm speaking for anyway, and we really think that we're looking out for opportunities to do that. And that's a great comment and question because it hits right at the heart of where we've been sitting. So, yeah. Any other questions, Mike? Oh, thank you, Dan. And that's from more than one. We echo that. Any questions from in here? Brett? You want to get him a mic?
Not as much a question. Peter, over the years it's been a prayer burden of mine for the building renovation. And I just am very heartened to hear, these next phases beginning. What I would encourage the committee is not just to rely on however frequent pulpit updates, but also a production schedule, anything that would enhance the transparency of the various activities, I think would be very helpful to the congregation who's you want to support and give to this.
Yes, thank you, Brett. So if you didn't catch that, it's just transparency, and we do want to be very transparent with this. And we are super open, like I had said earlier on today at the beginning of the meeting, is come to us if you have any questions. We appreciate that, observations, feedback, and our plan is to be very transparent about this whole process. I know it's been seemingly For those of you that aren't in the know on it, it's gone probably out farther than you were hoping for, and we're in that same boat. It has gone on farther than we were hoping to start this thing, but it was for a variety of reasons where we just had to do it. But we've kind of got a firm timeline now that is in place, and that's the beginning of this fall to get it kicked off and started.
One other question: the Romanian campus for the newer members, can we see some pictures and help us to understand the significance of our sister church? So,
Yep.
good observation. We just kind of assume that everybody knows what that's all about, and we have to keep retelling the story. So I appreciate the observation. And for our missions week, we'll try to throw in some stuff that way and update people on all of our missionaries.
In 2019, we had the opportunity to bring Pastor Christie and his family here, if you guys remember that, in May. And for those of us that were here, just to kind of be involved and just to get to see the family right in front of us, I mean, how impactful was that for those of us that were able to be part of that? So, yeah, it's one thing to know that we have a sister church, but it's another thing to live it out and see it in real life and that sort of thing. So if you haven't been to Romania and you haven't met the Golash family and you don't really know, then it is a little bit hard to understand and to visualize the impact that they're having there. But I can promise you, Pastor Christie and his family they're from the Lord and they are doing God's work over there. And it's just fun to see. And it's fun to get behind them too. It's a great ministry and mission that they have in Romania. Anything else? Okay. Any other questions from out there? Yes, Jeremy. Okay. So the interior questions, there are some. Yep. We've kind of got a tiered system. Right now our tier 1 is kind of what Dan was saying, those major exterior ones. But there are some other things, and we'll roll that out to you once we do a kickoff. But there are some internal things. I don't want to necessarily say them out loud for now. I try to talk smart about it, but I'll probably say things that maybe aren't on the plan anymore. But the answer to that, in short, is yes, there are some internal things. But it's much more exterior focus. Mel? We've been looking into that as much as we can. There's no major things like all the windows need to be replaced, that sort of thing, or the roof is leaking big time. Right now, all we know of is they're smaller, but Mike is working with Pastor Christie to find out that answer in things that we could look into more there. Yeah. Yeah. Vic? Well, I think in general we would, that's kind of something we would always like to do. Right now it's kind of tricky in 2021, but the hope is, yeah, I know that that's been done in the past with their church, and I think we would all love to make that happen again. To kind of sum up, if you can, if you're at home, Mike is just saying there is a fair amount of just labor costs with a lot of the things that Patesh needs done right now is more labor, like whether it's update painting and working on the outside, that sort of thing. So it's a great opportunity to maybe send a team, and that's maybe part of our capital campaign. Other questions? Yes. Carol.
Has capital campaign starting now already so that if people want to give prior to, the fall, they can?
We haven't specifically said that out loud yet, so I hate to say it and then not have it happen, but I guess we're going to be rolling out the campaign in 2021 this year, so that's something I guess I could answer. I don't want to say right now and not have it, but I think it's certainly going to happen at some point. It's going to be a specific fund that we give to, not just coming out of the general fund. But anyone else? There's no kids running down the hallway yet, so they're probably just waiting for me to end it. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Can I get a second? All those in favor say aye. Those against say no. Meeting adjourned. On your way rejoicing. Yeah.
He took it.